Again, there's more written about David than anybody in the Bible, and by no means is he some perfect fellow. That's why. And as we look, we just keep seeing Jesus' character and heart and ways in a spectacular manner that helps us in our humanness to see Jesus through the lens of David. But we also see God's heart towards us as he deals with David. And every chapter is just a memorial. Every chapter is just an unbelievable lesson. And there's so many things to it that if you tried to teach it all, it would be hours and hours every chapter. But here in chapter 8, after this, where David wanted to build a temple for the Lord, and the Lord said, I'm going to build you a house. Now, I had several of you guys come up and say, Bryan, it didn't say in that chapter where it said, God said no to David, and because you're a man of bloodshed. And very good, very good. Now you're starting to catch on, because we're going to pick that up in the Chronicles. So these stories are retaught in the Chronicles, but from another perspective. Some say that as you look at Samuel and Kings, that it's a human perspective, and then as we get into the Chronicles, it's from a heavenly perspective. Or it's a priestly perspective. So we're going to get to that. You say, well, why didn't you teach that then? It's like, well, if I do that, then I'm going to teach forever 2 Samuel, and then when I get to Chronicles, I'm going to say, you already taught it, and let's move on. So it wouldn't work. So that's how you teach it, and it works best that way. But it was great that you guys caught that. But here, after this desire to build the temple, it came to pass that David attacked the Philistines and subdued them. And so, from Jerusalem, going west towards the ocean, and also a bit south and a bit north, were the land of the Philistines. We don't know where they came from, but they came from boats, and their god was half man and half fish. And they were this radical, demonic warrior people. And they continually, since we know Israel was there, they had continually kept Israel in fear and attack and losing whatever they would gain in cities or land, they would lose back to the Philistines. And it was always a horrible, scary thing that they existed. But now finally David is king, not only just over one tribe of Judah, but over all the kingdom, and all the leaders are with him. And this is the key that we're going to see, because it's really where we're at right now as a church, asking that very same question and trying to accomplish the same thing. But now that David's got solidity at home, in the ranks, it's not a question what he can do. Where he just turns west, wins. Turns north, wins. Turns east, whichever way he turns. He just goes and conquers as far as he wants. So the first bit, he just turns west and just goes right until there's nobody else, till there's the Mediterranean Ocean. And David took Betheg Ammah from the hand of the Philistines, one of the key cities at that time. And then he now turns east, and he defeated Moab. Now, notice this unique thing David does. He forced them to the ground. He measured them off with a line. With 2 lines, he measured off those he put to death. And with 1 full line, those he kept alive. And so the Moabites became David's servants and brought tribute. Now, just real quick here. Remember the book of Ruth. This is a time when the children of Israel disobeyed God, and they left the land of Israel, this one family, And anyway, they married, one of the boys married a Moabitess. And if you go back, God cursed the Moabites. If you go back farther, they were the children of Lot. His 2 daughters, after he left Sodom and Gomorrah, got him drunk and had the Ammon and Moab and became the Ammonites and the Moabites. And they were right there, what is in the city or the country of Jordan today. And as it turns out, this cursed race became the great-grandmother to King David. Now, remember earlier, something that just these things happen quick, and I'm going to show you a couple of verses tonight. This happens so quick, and if you don't catch them, you could miss them. But when Saul was chasing David to kill him, David didn't really have anywhere to go that couldn't be conquered by Saul within the country. So he took his family, his mom and dad and everybody that was in jeopardy, and took him to Moab and to the king of Moab and asked them to take care of his family while he was decades on the run from Saul. We don't know what happened. All we know is that now David is back in the land of Israel, and especially reigning as king. His family's not there. And so the speculation is, and I think it's probably correct, is the Moabites didn't protect his family, treated them maybe horribly, or turned them over to Saul. But we see that David has no soft feelings for his cousins, the Moabites, whatsoever. He just does sort of a weird thing and gets a couple of lines and just thins them out. And just said, man, if you got a couple of lines on you, you live, not, you're dead. And it was sort of a brutal thing. And that's what people speculate on, that why David did that to the Moabites. There really is no other reason why he would do something like this, and he does it to nobody else. Well, in verse 3, David also defeated Hadazer, the son of Rehob. He's a popular name that we see over and over again. And he's the king of Zoab, as he went to recover his territory at the river, where? Euphrates. Guys, this is the middle of Iraq. Okay? So we're talking, he's conquering east now up to around 350 miles away. And if you look at the farthest eastern border that God gave to Abraham, this is it, the Euphrates River. And even though it sounds like David is conquering an immense amount of land, David only conquers 10% of what God gave to Abraham if you look at it. It's about 300,000 square miles of land that there's a few different descriptions of what God gave Abraham, but if you look at the biggest one out of Genesis, the biggest, farthest reaching map that Israel would one day obtain, and it seems to be consistent with the one that we see in prophecy, all the way from the Mediterranean and then all the way east to the middle of Iraq, and then up to northern Iraq into Iran a bit, and then coming back around. It's 300,000 square miles. And the most David and then Solomon held, because he had a time of peace, was only 30,000 square miles, 10% of that. And so he's all the way up in the Euphrates. So this is just sort of speaking of an amazing hand of blessing upon David. So he's got this army that's big, but not that kind of big. And he's just going from Israel west, beats these Philistines that they have never been able to conquer, and conquers them, turns east and just conquers some of these countries that have never been conquered, really. They're just sort of unconquerable. All the way up. The ancient people of the Babylonians, the ancient people of the Assyrians, It's just amazing. And then David took from him 1,000 chariots, 700 horsemen, 20,000 foot soldiers. And David, notice here, if you don't watch, you'll miss it. In verse 4, David hamstrung all the chariot horses except, ouch, here it is, that he spared enough of them for 100 chariots. Doesn't sound like much, but we got to go back to Deuteronomy 17, where God said to the king, just 4 things. I want you to take the scriptures, write it down so you have your own copy, read it every day. Don't multiply horses, wives, gold and silver to yourself. As we are here heading to probably the most popular chapter about David, chapter 12, the story of David and Bathsheba. You know what we're going to see as we're heading that way? David adding horses, wives, and gold and silver to himself. And then he falls with Bathsheba. Interesting, isn't it? That he was weakening himself without realizing he was weakening himself. And again, when later we see Solomon having 700 wives and 300 concubines, now that's adding wives. So David only had a dozen. It's not like he really had a lot of wives. As a king, a dozen wives, that's almost like having no wives. Right? He hamstrung them all except for 100 chariots. Come on. He just basically conquered the unconquerable world of his time without any. And so now he has 100. That's like having none. But God wanted him to have none. Because when God brought the victory, as here, God didn't want them to struggle with who won it and who didn't win it. You guys remember that story of Gideon, right? That story of Gideon, you know, they go down and they have tens of thousands of men, and then they get down to 10,000, and he's just freaking out, going, how can we win against hundreds of thousands or 10,000? And God said, I'm not done. And he finally gets down to how many men? 300 men with trumpets and a candle, a thing of fire. That was it. And God said, now you won't take the glory for yourself. But even with 10,000 men against hundreds of thousands, you would have taken the glory to yourself. And so with 100 chariots, it's enough to take the glory to yourself, to confuse the people. Was it us or was it God? Remember the story of Elijah when he's going to call fire to heaven. He starts getting buckets of water, dumping it on the sacrifice. Again, was it a freak spark from somebody's pipe or somebody's cigar or some kid playing with matches? Or was it God? I mean, he just doused this thing with so much water. It had to be God, and it was an amazing thing. And this is, again, what David is taking away. So it may seem like a little tiny nothing sentence, except they spared a few of them for 100 chariots, but no big deal. Let's move on. But it's a big deal. Now in verse 5, when the Syrians of Damascus came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David killed 22,000 of the Syrians. Then David put garrisons in Syria of Damascus. Sort of funny because almost every day you hear in the news about the Syrians of Damascus attacking Israel or having some problem with Israel to this day, isn't it? And the Syrians became David's servants and brought tribute. So the Lord, here's a beautiful sentence in verse 6, the Lord preserved David wherever he went. That's what we're seeing here. I love that earlier in 1 Samuel where it says, and God let none of Samuel's prophecies fall to the ground. It was almost as if sometimes Samuel wasn't right on, but God made him right on. So everybody would know that he's God's prophet. And here it's almost like David, even when he's not 100% where he should be, God just blessed him so much it didn't matter. And that goes back to last chapter. When he said, hey, I want to build a temple to God. And Nathan said, David, do anything in your heart. It's the Lord. Because there's that principle that you heard. It's like, love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and do whatever you want. You know, there's not this hard thing trying to figure out God's will. If you're just loving God with all your being, do whatever you want. And that was in essence, David, you're just such a worshiper of God. You're so humbled before God. You're so yielded and submitted, and you're so sensitive to what the Lord wants. And you've got these desires to just plow through to conquer land and to put your enemies down so your people can have freedom. Now, we're going to discover the real reason that's going on with David is because he knows his son is going to be able to build the temple. And he wants his son, as far as the eye can see, to be at peace. And he also wants the gold and the silver and the bronze and anything else they have of value from all of these pagans to quit putting it into their pagan temples and to put it into the temple of God. And that's exactly what David does. He spends his lifetime gathering the resources as far as the eye can see of these great kingdoms, piles them up in Jerusalem. And so when Solomon builds the temple, it becomes one of the 7 wonders of the world. And we're going to see where David says, guys, we need to build this temple. And he goes to the heads, the rich people, and says, you guys need to give. And then we're going to go to the full population of the people. But I'm going to start. I'm going to give everything. David gave everything he had, which you calculated up, it was like $1 billion. And then all the heads gave it. That was like $1 billion. And they went to the people. And so it was an enormous thing that David collected and collected and collected. But the reason was that it wasn't to, make himself a piano of gold and, with gold menorahs everywhere. That wasn't his heart at all. So notice here in verse 7, David took the shields of gold that had belonged to the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. Also from Betah and from Beraotai. See, God put this in here so you listen to the teachers. You're going, man, they're so wise. They know the Bible's so good. And then you get here and you're going, man, he is just an idiot like me. And so anyway, just go along with it like I'm saying these perfectly, And these are the cities of Hadadezer. And King David took a large amount of the bronze. Now, when Toi, king of Hamath, heard that David had defeated all the army of Hadadezer, then Toi sent Joram, his son, to King David and greeted him and blessed him because he had fought against Hadadezer and defeated him. For Hadadezer had been at war with Toi. And Joram brought with him articles of silver, articles of gold, and articles of bronze. So he, the motives of these guys, who knows really, but he basically says, oh, you defeated my enemy, and so here is a bunch of wealth that I probably would have lost fighting with him anyway. I want you to have it. And also a sign of submission. Hey, you don't need to fight against me. I'm giving it to you. So I noticed that you wanted all of his gold and bronze and, and you killed everybody and burnt their cities down to get it. You don't need to even kill any of us. Here it is. So who knows whether it was really him trying to bless David or really just not wanting to get killed by David. In verse 11, King David also dedicated these to the Lord along with the silver and the gold that he had dedicated from all the nations which he had subdued. From Syria, from Moab, from the people of Ammon, from the Philistines, from Amalek, from the spoil of Hadadezer, the son of Jerob, the king of Zoab. And David made himself a name when he returned from killing 18,000 Syrians in the Valley of Salt. Again, we have the Dead Sea east of Jerusalem, and there's the Valley of Salt where the Dead Sea is. The other one end of it is where it was most likely Sodom and Gomorrah and other I'm not going to go into all the civilizations that were there, but he was down there, lowest spot on planet Earth, lowest body of water on planet Earth. And in verse 14, he also put garrisons in Edom. Throughout all Edom, he put garrisons, and all of Edomites became David's servants, and the Lord preserved David wherever he went. So if you look at this, that's basically the area of Jordan today. You have the area of Ammonites, the Moabites, and the Edomites. And remember, the Edomites is where the rock city of Petra is, and it's an amazing place to visit even to this day, but it has significance in the prophetic rule of the last days, because when the Antichrist, when the Israel realizes this isn't the Messiah, it's the Antichrist, and he begins to wipe out all the Jews worldwide, they can run to Edom. They can run to Petra, to this rock city, and be preserved there. And the country of Jordan is a place of protection, where God protects all those who believe in him in that tribulation period. Well, in verse 15, so David reigned over all of Israel, and David administered, notice, judgment and justice to all his people. Now, if you go back, I believe this is really the first time in the nation of Israel they had a real system that gave people freedom and worked. Again, if you're, out in the middle of Mexico and you see a police officer pulling you over at 11 at night, you don't know what you're getting. You don't know if you're getting the police, if you're getting a cartel, you're getting some guy who's just going to, you're in fear. And he's going to talk about, you give him $100 to let you go, or give you $1,000 to let you go, or he's going to impound your car, get out and get on the side of the road. You just don't know what you're going to get. And I'd say in most of the countries around the world, it's that way. You just don't know what you're going to get. I know when I travel the world and I, get back in the United States and I've got my U.S. passport, I'm like, But I'm more and more scared of our country, because the justice and the judgment is less and less and less. In our country today, somebody says, oh, you did a crime and we're going to prosecute you, and you got to defend yourself. You're going to lose your wealth trying to prove you're innocent. And then once you do prove yourself innocent, they're like, oh yeah, you're innocent, but it just costs you everything you own. You're having to get out of your house, and you don't have a car anymore. You're going, hey, I'm innocent, but it cost me $300,000 and I don't have any money anymore, but I'm innocent. It's sort of a scary system. Even here today, it's not something that really is helpful. It's destructive in many, many ways. But here David put together a system where people could be at rest and peace and judgment and justice to not just the rich, or not just people of certain tribes, but to all the people. And that is no small feat. And if anything was sort of the stamp of David that would last for many generations, this would be it. A system where people, again, could be at peace if they were having to deal with the court systems, or having to deal in any way with those in authority. They would feel like I'm getting justice, whether I'm poor or rich, or whether I'm from this tribe or that tribe. We're all being treated equally. And that's really, again, one of those verses that you don't want to skim past too quickly, because it is a powerful thing that's being stated there. And in verse 16, and Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was over the army. And Josaphat, the son of Ahilud, was recorder. And Zodak, the son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, the son of Abiathar, were the priest. And Sarai was the scribe. Benaniah, the son of Jehoiada, was over both the Sherethites and the Pelethites. And David's sons were chief ministers. So here is another, verse 16 to 18 is another powerful thing, in that David understood leadership. David put men in places of leadership, and that he had things organized where it could move forward as a country. As they prospered and succeeded, they could continue to move forward. Well, chapter 9, I was hoping to get into that tonight, but we had a lot of stuff going on. But this is an amazing chapter. And let me just get started in this, and we'll finish it next week. But David said, "Is there still anyone who is left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" So here's David in the midst of all his prosperity, and he remembers his conversation with Jonathan, "Show mercy to my lineage." And these days, the king would wipe out everybody, because the prior king's family would constantly try to overthrow him and kill him, destroy him, and try to get their throne reestablished, which even happened after David did all this. It still happened. And David's heart, as we go on here, notice in verse 3, it says, "To whom I may show the kindness of God." Is there anybody from the house of Saul that I could show the kindness of God? It appears here that David was wrestling. You know, we often see David like going, "Oh, I just want to love everybody and be kind to everybody. Whoever's the house of Saul, I just want to love on them." And it's not the case. David's a man. And Saul destroyed his life. Very possibly had his own family destroyed, trying to save them from Saul while he's in hiding. And now that he's on top, he could just easily destroy the family of Saul like a bug for, vengeance for what he did to him unrighteously. David didn't do anything to deserve the treatment that Saul treated him. But in all of that, David saw through his own bitterness, his own anger, his own desire for vengeance, and said that if his kingdom is going to be established as a just kingdom, as a righteous kingdom, it's got to be based upon the heart of God, not upon my heart. You see, that's what Saul did. Saul said, "I'm the king, so I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want." And that's why his kingdom didn't last. God said, "Saul, I would have established your kingdom forever. But now I'm taking it from you and giving it to your neighbor who's more worthy than you." And David knows, that's me. That's me. I'm in the same place where Saul's at. What do I need to do? I need right now to do whatever God would do if he were ruling and reigning. And one of the things God would do would show his kindness. And here it is, a teaching that we don't get clearly until Jesus, to love your enemies. If you find them, bless them. Do good to them. We learn in Romans 12, feed them. Give them to drink. Don't be overcome with evil, but what? Overcome evil with good. And here we see David probably wrestling through every bit of this. But he takes it to the next level until he takes the family of Saul and not just says, "I'll ignore you and let you have your own life, and don't bother me, I won't bother you." And he could have done that. And people would have thought, "That's amazing." But he takes these family of Saul and brings them to his table and says, "You're as my own sons." Sound familiar? Definitely the heart of God. And so as we're going through this saying, man, David's such a sinner. David's such an evil man in so many ways. David blew it in so many, but yet, why is he a man after God's own heart who did all his will? Why is he this man that is raised up that Jesus said, "I'm going to reign upon his throne forever and ever"? We come back and we realize these things are the most important things to our Lord. To love our enemies, pray for them, bless them, do good to them. And David had that beautiful heart. And we're going to just go into some detail and see some other things next week in Mephibosheth. But we're going to close out tonight so we can have some time just seeking the Lord here. And Lord, we do just come before you and thank you again for a precious night of worship, of prayer, of baptism, of communion.